Are you you're on the road with Dave Matthews right now, or are you
Like, this is my last day home.
last day home? Okay.
I was here for about a week, and first couple days I'm usually completely brain dead, and then the second couple days I'm usually hectically getting ready to go back out again. So it's kind of like a 1 week is just enough to come back and rush back into it, I guess.
You're a guitar tech. Is it Greg or Craig?
Craig.
Craig. Um, what's that like? Between legs of a tour, when you get back, what kind of efforts go into preparing? Or like, what have you been doing with your week off? I guess.
Well, me, I just practice. I mean, what I do is I like to, for me, practicing with DMB, once you practice all the songs, which I did way before tour, is to practice improvising. So I put on records that I like to play to, and because that kind of keeps you in shape. So I do that for a couple hours each day. I did it last
Okay.
night. Yeah, so that's kind of how I mean, that's what I love to do anyway. So it's fun. Put on records that I like and play along to them. It keeps improvising is a funny thing because you can play a lot of things that you know, and then you start to improvise, and so then that takes a lot of time just when you're playing by yourself with the music. Like if you play a record that's like an hour long, the first 15 to 20 minutes, even a half an hour, you'll play kind of things you know, because that's just what happens. It's habit. And then you start to break free and take more spaces and create different phrases. And that's really improvising. To me, it's not like you're playing some new complicated thing. You're reinventing melodies that are, can be anything, but that's the whole point, is to be fresh in the moment. So to practice improvising sounds kind of weird, but you really can. You just have to do it long enough so that you're actually improvising. I mean, it's
Right.
kind of a mental mind fuck to figure out when you're doing it and when you're not, because it's kind of hard to tell in a way because you're having fun, but you might stop and go, okay, I'm having fun doing this thing, but I do this all the time. Why did I not do that? And then just
Right.
backwards, or anything to make it different. I mean, there's only so many notes, but it's usually the way you space them, or loud and soft and vibrato. Those are a lot of details that make something. You can play the same two notes, but play in a whole bunch of different ways.
No, I love it. I love it. Like things maybe like if I can relate, like starting a solo in a certain way or whatever. Like if you always start with a bend on the G string, you have to change it up, and you go home and you practice kind of reinventing the guitar every time.
Yeah, and then mostly I never pre-analyze a solo before I do it. But one night recently I did, and it was so much fun because I was like, because I got Buddy up there and he's a complete master, and then Shawnee and Jeff, and they were just playing all kind of, they change it up every night. And I was like, okay, I always start out in the one key. Let me start on the dominant altered chord over the regular chord and play with that. And it was so much fun because it was just an entry thing. It wasn't like I'm going to stick with this dissonant harmony for the whole solo, but it was fun to introduce that because it had a context that we do at this chord earlier in the song when the
Yeah.
horns are, and Stefan started spontaneously playing a descending bass line. And so after a couple of gigs, we all figured out what we can do when he gets to that during the horns improv. And so there's this chord we've been landing on, and it's always smiling at Buddy, like, yeah, that's the one. It's like, it sounds like this. I have my guitar. It's an altered dominant chord. Instead of like this, it
Yeah.
sounds like, so it's got a very departing harmony. So I started a solo based on that, and it sounded really out, but it was
Yeah.
you're stating a harmony. It's clear what you're doing. So, and it's kind of cool. And then you go back to the key, and then it sounds like, oh, what's that? So there's just so many ways to improvise, and it's always a different way to do it, whether you start from nothing or start with something you pre-think, or most of the time I just go blank and start, and then and when it's over, I go, what happened? And then hopefully something cool.
That's incredible. That's so interesting to hear. Especially the way you like the combination of you know, you say your mind goes blank, but you're also talking about like altered dominant chords. So like clearly a lot of theory involved too with your soloing.
Oh yeah, and that particular, most of those chords have, like that one in particular has a very distinctive sound. So you have to kind of stick to this weird scale. So you think of that part, but then once you start improvising, you know, your brain is trained to improvise in patterns, at least some degree, and then you can get lost in that. And so that, you know, that chord has a certain scale,
Mhm.
and it's weird against D minor because the song in question is in D minor. But if you start a solo out and you're playing F sharps, it's like, well, that's not D minor, but the the other notes around it give it a context of like, oh, you know, that's really not the regular harmony, but it's very interesting because it's a dominant hanging over the chord. You know, that's just a different method of creating a suspension, I guess. There's a lot of
Yeah.
words like this and that, but it all comes down to how it sounds. Like when me and Buddy hit that chord, we just smile. And even though that's a very dissonant chord, I think of it as the smile chord because it feels so good. And when you're playing, you know, this thing. So it was just rewarding to say, well, I'm going to start my solo at the end of the song on that chord and see what that, you know. But anyway, that's just
Right.
one little mind fuck to play with
Right.
what
And
else would look.
just for clarification, you said a D altered chord, but you also mentioned minor and playing the F
Oh
sharp
yeah,
over it, which of
of
course is the
course.
major third.
Yeah, the song in question is Seek Up, of course, which is
Yeah.
mostly when it's improvising, it's D minor. And then when
Okay.
we've been playing it for years and years, and in the middle of crazy horn blowing, you know, they both get blowing. It sounds insanely awesome. The bass starts going, and then he plays like that kind of progression,
Yeah.
which is very simple. But during the course of the out solo, me and Buddy were catching those chords. So we go, and then so we start hitting that, going, oh yeah, that's a smile. And so the band is playing something like that, and you start a solo, like, and they're all still playing D. It creates a really cool, like, suspended animation almost. Like, wait a minute, that's not where we're at, but that's somewhere else, but we're there because, you know, how can you be there at the same time? You know, music is full of those kind of things. So yeah, it's like what's the word? The strangeness or the irony or the, I'm trying to find this other word. Two contradictory things coexisting. But anyway, you know, that's what music is cool about. You can do all kind of things and then forget it. And
Yeah.
then if somebody recorded it, oh, that's great. It was the best solo I ever did. Or if you think it was the best solo you ever did, when you play it back, you go, oh, that was not the best solo. You know, but that's the thing about playing a lot. Like if you just play one gig every so often, it becomes more like, oh, I messed up. Oh God, I messed up the whole. But if you play a lot, then you know you can mess up and not feel so bad about it because you're trying new things every night. So you're bound not to play an improv totally perfect every note, but that's because you're like dancing on space, you know, dancing on the wall.
Yeah, I think I heard you say something like that to Andres Moda. Did I get his name right?
Yeah,
Um,
under yeah,
yeah, you did an interview with him a little bit back, but you mentioned about like not feeling so bad because you play out so often and you get to, you know, try those experimental things like uh, just kind of changing the harmonic textures and creating new tensions. I I guess I had a couple questions for you about I have two questions about like kind of travel and the touring life, and then I also have some questions just about like Guardian Angel and more broadly um, your songwriting process, because I know you said that you take a lot of phone recordings and you print them on a CD, but it also and like maybe that's where you like take you find ones you like and put puzzle pieces together sort of with your
yeah,
compositions. But I also kind of got the gist that maybe like, you know, you just sit at around sometimes with the guitar and you find like a melodic motif you like and then you just loop it until you kind of figure out where to expand that thought to. um And I guess really the question is, you know, out of those two, or is there a third thing I'm missing, songwriting process, that I'm missing? Like, which do you prefer? Which one was maybe used for Guardian Angel? It's kind of broad and
Oh, okay. So the songwriting process with the tape and the idea of sitting around and kind of looping something or literally just playing it, that kind of works in that the writing process that is what I would call the right brain, you know, the thinking part of the brain, writing like that. And like I take the things from the CDs and then I'll learn it, and then like I say, I'll play it over and over and start to develop the next idea. Because usually one idea, if I like it and I start to play it over and over, I'll come. It's just natural to think of another section. Or if you have enough snippets on tape, you can look for or further afield for another section. Sometimes that's really fun. But like Guardian Angels, the process of that is a different kind of process because that was more of a recording, what I would call writing and recording, where you where in the case of that song, it was really kind of an improv writing, whereas it has drums on it now. But the original recording I did at home in the studio like about 15 years ago, I had done this. I used to do these home projects for my own entertainment. I would make albums
Mhm.
that I wanted to listen to for myself. You know, they weren't really for, you know, I like music. I like to make music. So I had a way to make recordings at home. They were all very crude. They no more than 4-track, you know, cassette, but I could do a lot once I learned how to work that. So anyway, this project, after doing a couple where I used to have this drum and bass machine. It wasn't a computer. I still don't have a computer, but it was, for me, it was a perfect machine. It worked kind of like a cassette player, which was also perfect. And you could create, you know, your own drums. You could sequence a whole song and bass and there and put it on 2 tracks. Done. So I got it. Once I learned how to do that machine, I was in a whole new level of writing music with the machine, as well as, you know, taking things on tapes, you know. And so this process occurred when I lived in New Mexico and I was more into home recording. I haven't really done any much home recording since then. I really prefer to go to a studio and let somebody else work the hard part.
Mhm.
Because when I'm trying to record at home and messing with the recording apparatus, to me that gets in the way a lot, even though I do it. Like a lot of last year I was making videos and stuff like that. And it was very, eventually you just start to hate it because it's different than going to the studio and just being able to hold your instrument and play and then have somebody else press go and stop. When you got to press go and stop, my crew recording usually means I have to go over here or move over there. You know, it's much more
Right.
complicated than just, although it's a lot cheaper if you do it in your home. But so I always, nowadays, I kind of prefer going into a studio. But anyway, it started going on. This project, Guardian Angels, was on a CD of songs that I just played to the drum machine grooves that were there because I wanted to make them just groove instead of, I like to write a lot of busy, I call muscular drumming, you know, it was like, you know, that kind of stuff because I'm a closet drummer. I love drums, very muscular drums, you know, rock and roll drums, all kind of drums. But so I recorded a bunch of tracks with drum machines. That track, for some reason, I thought sounded so nice when I removed the drum machine track because it had so much of a groove. You know, it was kind of a combo of a samba and a Brazilian groove because I didn't really know how to play either, but I just intuitively played that kind of feel. And
Mhm.
because it was to a drum machine track, it was that feel. So when Will came up with this idea of, and he'd already made a few videos with other artists to raise money for charity by finding a song that was well recorded that you hadn't released before. And I have a lot of stuff that maybe not all of it's well recorded, a lot of it with drum machines. So it's also, if you have a tolerance for drum machines, which I do. But anyway, uh, so I sent him all this music and he picked that one out because it didn't have drums and also because it was kind of a nice, simple tune. And the whole idea about when I made that recording was just keep it simple and not think too much. So I would play the thing, play the drum track, and I would improvise the keyboard part, probably the bass, and then the chords, so I could use them on 2 tracks. I'm
Mhm.
trying to remember how it all went down. Uh, so all the parts on that were pretty much improvised, and the only variation on pure improvisation is that the process of making those recordings by starting, it really started with the drum machines and me probably playing the keyboard, laying down a groove,
Mhm.
and just kind of improvising that song like that because it's just pretty simple thing. It's got a simple chord progression, and then improvising the guitar on top of it. But the whole idea in both cases was not to try to get complicated or do your, what I would call your normal Reynolds shit where you think about a lot of stuff to make and put into a song. I can cite lots of examples, but this recording I was really trying to do the opposite, like flow, like chill, but this is back when the chill genre of music was out. And I kind of dug that because I'm not into straight up disco per se, but there's a lot of music with that beat that is great. And there's a lot of music with that beat that's awful. It's the beat by itself is neutral. But anyway, what was I going with all of that? I was talking about making that recording. Sorry, I lost myself.
That's all right. I had a question because you said you played
Good.
keys on it, right?
What's
But
that?
if you remembered where you were going with it, by all
Oh,
means,
I was
keep going.
just the whole process of that song was different than like when I'm writing, as it were. There was more of a recording, I would call recording writing, where it's just about the flow of that moment, rather than something that you pre-thought. I mean, once you commit to the drum track, which I did, and I made the keyboard, then that's done. So that's an improv, but you're going to play to it, and it's simple enough that you can kind of improvise to it. But you also, having done the one thing, you know what's coming, so it's not like this complete surprise improv. Okay, now that's kind of a song. I'm going to play to it. I'm going to improvise, but try to make something that is melodic and has some repetition, but not just for the sake of that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it's a hard line to draw because it's almost like, well, do I want to make a pop record and think about all the things that you have to think about when you make a pop record, which are many. And sure enough, there's a science to that. But without doing that, to kind of just want to make some nice music. And that CD, I have all the other music. It's called Chill Remix, kind of making fun of the whole name of the genre. And none of the songs actually had names until we started working on that one. And then I came up with that name because I thought it was a very healing name for anything during a terrible pandemic that we still are in phase 2 of. So anyway, that kind of explains that. It was kind of an improv, and even the name was kind of improv later, 15 years later. Just
right.
kind of thinking, I'm going to work with this, but it kind of works with the whole thing. Kind of came together. The video of the statue coming down, which that wasn't planned. That just happened because the one day they had to do drone footage in Charlottesville, that was happening, and I guess they were up on events locally that they caught it, and that kind of became the video, really, more than the music is now kind of a montage to the video, which I think is cooler than I could have ever thought of what would go with this video. Oh, taking down a statue that was the focal point of the awful racist invasion of Charlottesville a few years ago, and seeing it quietly be removed with no fanfare because that's the right thing to do, and it was just cool. So to have that as part of the video, I'm done. I don't need to make any more videos. That's the coolest video I'll ever make, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I was reading your interview in the Guardian where you spoke more about the statues coming down. I didn't realize the song had been written 15 years prior to. I thought it might have been written over the course of the pandemic, but it's really fitting, and I really like it. And so I can probably assume this, but since you did the drum beat before, uh, well, excuse me, Nikki, was her name Nikki? I'm sorry, the
Yeah, Nikki.
Nikki. Before she added the beat, what I want, more organically, I guess maybe, but the string parts, those are pretty legato. Did you perform those strings, or did you use a keyboard to play those? Or is it,
All the
and is that
music
you
besides
playing
the
bass?
yeah, all the music besides the drums is keyboard, bass, and keyboard sounds that were just, and I had a nice keyboard, and it was kind of like a upright bass sound, and then I always call those kind of keyboard sounds the Mellotron gods, because I'm a fan of like prog rock back in the day. Even
Yeah,
like the Moon Blues, the sound of a mellotron is just warms me. And so, even though that's not a mellotron, just any kind of synthesized strings. I mean, there's obviously cheesy synthesized strings, and that's obviously up to the observer, because one man's awesome synth strings could be another man's awful, not good sound, you know. Because I also really love the sound of violins. I love listening to real string quartets and stuff. But yeah, that was just the keyboard. It had these nice sounds, and it all kind of created itself, you know, the drum beat and the vibe, and then the guitar, and then it just kind of sat there as a pretty piece of music waiting to find a name and a reason to be. And there we found both of them in the COVID.
nice. Yeah, yeah. I think the strings came out well. I mean, the legato sounds really work for them, in my opinion.
Things.
Kind of wanted to talk about like maybe some of the moods of the piece too. Like for me, I would call it kind of overall an optimistic tune with like a good sense of wonder and adventure. But just going off of the name Guardian Angel, kind of the way I listened to the track was that it's really nice to have a guardian angel, but then like some of the darker, more brooding like string notes made me feel like, okay, it's great to have a guardian angel, but also like you have to kind of also like dislike having a guardian angel, because that means there's some sort of like trial or tribulation that's maybe happening to you. I was wondering if you could maybe talk about how you feel about your song Guardian Angel and the moods of the
Okay.
song.
Well, uh, I believe that there's things in the universe that we don't understand. I like the idea of guardian angels. I don't necessarily believe in literal angels, but I don't know more than the people that do. You know what I mean? It's all something it's like, well, not exactly like physics is something you can prove, because there, there are physicists that can prove that. You can't really prove angels other than something you can assume they might have had something to do with on another plane that came into reality and it worked out. My concept for this song and the guardian angels idea sans, you know, literal angels. I mean, because I believe there are definitely forces in the universe we don't understand. I think once we try to describe them in words, then they become more narrowly defined, and then it becomes, well, is it really that? You know, because it's like music. You can put it into all kind of words and scientifically write it out, but then when it's happening, it's still another thing. You know what I mean? But anyway, Guardian Angels to me, since the video is showing something that was a beautiful thing that happened over time, to me, it's a great concept to allow yourself to believe that things happened, whether randomly or meant to be. They happened and they created something that you liked, something that's good, like bringing down the statue. Whatever happened to make that happen, all the things, even if you looked at it from a strictly like Buddhist cause and effect, you know, all the causes to create the effects. However you want to look at that, it's a great way to describe the idea that guardian angels made that happen. And then it becomes like a metaphor. Like you'd say, well, then Charlottesville's the guardian angel, or the people that took down the statues just doing their job with the guardian angels. I know you could say, well, that's a cop out. That just means anything. And then it does. And it is, because I don't want to, I don't literally believe in angels or demons. I believe that humans trying to understand the universe that is so full of things they don't understand uh, will come up with concepts like that to kind of help them understand things that they don't. Like, so put a picture on it, put a word on it, put a title, put a name, put a concept, so we can understand it. But ultimately, when the reality of whatever it is happens, that happens strictly in real time, and you're creating a memory. But as soon as it's done, it's your memory of that. So the reality that happens in real time is kind of beyond words when it's happening, because it's just happening and you're reacting. Like, if you see a snake, you're gonna jump. Reality is like an ongoing snake. You move, you react, and then after, put it together in a story, or before, you kind of try to make a plan and make it happen according to a plan. And if it doesn't, you change the plan. But anyway, so for me, Guardian Angels is like a great idea to place something like the events that caused uh, that statue to come down. And there's obviously some terrible events to get to there, like those people coming to Charlottesville and waving swastikas. That's awful, ugly, terrible stuff. But I think it did maybe put a focus on that, and then they finally took the statues down. And it might have been they were
Yeah.
playing, and they just came there to complain that they didn't want their hero taken away, but too bad.
Hmm.
And so anyway, I guess that's a loose jazz interpretation of Guardian Angels.
No, thank you for that. I mean, that's kind of the wonderful thing about music is it's so interpretive. It's so, you can change it to your perspective and to some degree. I just had a couple more questions for you. Some about your writing process, some still about Guardian Angel. Like, I wanted to know what guitar you used when you played on Guardian Angel, because I know you said you have like a old nylon that's maybe your favorite, but you also said you had a nice D12.
Well, this guitar is a guitar that I got as a gift right about the time of making that recording, because back in New Mexico, often spurring recording would be an instrument that I just got. So this was a Martin. It doesn't have a number designation. It's like a Dreadnought, but it's called a sustainable wood Martin. And they had these guitars. They probably still make them, but they came out. This was about roughly 15 years ago. Made from wood that they either grew or was already aged. I don't remember that guitar. It also had an arched back slightly. So it had a nice deep bass sound, and it didn't sound like a brand new guitar. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It sounded, oh, this guitar sounds like it's been around. So I used that, and I used that for the home footage because it was here. And then we did the footage at the in Charlottesville. I didn't have that guitar with me because I don't really use it live or anything. It's different. I have to have a different acoustic pickup rig for it, and it just makes it complicated to have more than one, because if I go out and play acoustic like solo, I have two rigs, one for 12, one for 6. If I go out with Dave, it's just the one for the 6. And this guitar will require an extra rig because they use it's called an ARA system that models the guitar's sound when it's mic'd. So each ARA system is kind of custom to the guitar. And so that guitar is just different enough so that you couldn't use it in a regular ARA. So I have one somewhere, but like I say, it's kind of a pain in the ass to drag one little guitar around. But anyway, it fulfilled its life's purpose by playing on that song, if
Right.
that's ever done. But it's a really nice guitar. It kind of got a funny story about that guitar. It got stank. It got stanked up somehow in storage. A cat invaded the area in question, wherever it was in storage. And you know how cats can make something smell forever like cat pee. So the guitar case that was in, I didn't realize had that smell. And it was in that case for a very long time. And so the whole summer I'm trying to think. Yeah, because I didn't make that video till the fall. I spent the whole summer trying to air that guitar out, and I felt that I definitely had to get rid of the case. It was going because it would never not smell. And I had all these techniques to get the smell out. None of them worked. I used all these other techniques to get the smell off the guitar to the point of thinking I almost messed up the finish, but I didn't. It just looks different but I did finally get the smell off the guitar because I didn't want to make that video holding the guitar. It's like, oh Lord, it smells like cat piss here. So anyway, yeah, that has its own kind of story with a unique twist, as it were.
Um, just another curious question about your songwriting process. So Guardian Angel, I'm not sure I heard an electric on it at all. But I was wondering, when you're songwriting, and you're picking up a song and putting it down and picking it up again and putting it down, do you, if you know the song is going to be performed for that recording on the acoustic, do you still ever pick up an electric and tool around with it a little bit just for perspective? Or if if you kind of already have, a more defined sound you're going for, do you really just hone in on that?
Yeah, I think with the case on that recording was pretty much I was honing in on the special sound of that guitar, how it kind of went with, the sound of the other instruments. Sometimes, making a record, well, I guess I've kind of over the years divided up different modes of recording I find fulfilling. One is strictly just acoustic solo, because to me, there's something special about guitar music that is just that, because you're free to make the bass and the melody and the chords and rhythm or to emit either one of those for effect. But I also love recording with TR3 in a band. So something like that would probably be more if I used an acoustic and felt like adding some electric or vice versa. Because then you're in a recording process where you might have a song, but once you record and you're with a band, the idea is to like, how do you flesh this out? Or if it doesn't need fleshing out, but the whole idea is recording with a band, multi-instrumental. I mean, with a trio, you've got three instruments, but you can always add a few, uh, as long as it's something that you think you can recreate live enough that it's not going to make the live sound weak if the record has 20 guitars, you know.
Great. Thanks. I appreciate that answer. It's a lot to think about, and it's really great to hear this from, someone at your caliber and who's been doing it as long as you have. I think a lot of like young musicians will find this incredibly interesting and helpful, as they go on their own artistic paths and whatnot. Just quick about the being able to promote the single for the community housing in Charlottesville. I mean, without with touring being shut down and kind of just things like online press and social media being some of your probably your only main outlets, I was wondering if you could just speak to that at all, and like, how do you go about promoting music these days?
Well, I guess, up until the pandemic, I wasn't really involved much other than doing a phoner, for tours
Mhm.
or a solo record or DMB, and then promoting things online, which usually was something that I'm kind of removed from, because most of the time up until COVID, I'm on the road. And so other people take care of that and
Yeah.
will ask me how do this want to look, and here's the interview, can you do this? So during COVID, that kind of changed and I became more involved with the direct, although there's still people that do way more than me. I'm just kind of more involved than I used to be, I guess, with like last year, instead of recording, which I probably should have done because I wrote all these acoustic songs, but since COVID changed everything, instead I just made YouTube performances and put those out instead of making a record. So I could look at that two ways. Like I wasted a year not recording those records where I could have a CD now and everybody could buy it. Or I could do what seemed to be the right thing to do in the moment, is get music out there. It's COVID, nobody can go see. And for a while, I wasn't even sure you could get music. You know what I mean? Like I was very happy when I ordered a CD and it came. I'm like, oh, good, that's still happening. Because for a while, you're not sure, people are freaking out about toilet paper. It becomes very dark, and half the news is you're not sure what to believe because everybody questions everybody. Um, so that just changed a lot of things. And I'm kind of glad to be able to get out and play gigs and kind of figuring out how to work the drill, as it were. Because last year we learned how to work the drill completely bunkered down. Then I did a quick solo tour where it looked like everything was okay. People were getting vaccinated, but then as soon as that started, the next wave of COVID came, and that's kind of putting a damper on things. But I think people are adapting as they have to if they want to keep doing things. And so I'm getting ready to look at touring in January, doing a band tour with TR3, which is a different challenge than touring with DMB because they have a giant infrastructure to kind of oversee protocols for COVID, as it were, rules, but it involves like 70 people every day. A good many of them are different people every day. So that's a big challenge, but they have the means to do that. It's on one level much easier to control a small group of people, but on the other level, there isn't a physical bubble. You know what I mean? Like on the road with the band, you're in a van, you're interacting with all the places. On the road with a big thing, you're in a hotel, take a bus to the gig, that gig becomes a COVID bubble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm getting mad messages. All right.
Okay. We can wrap it up pretty quickly here. I just had two kind of more fun questions.
Oh,
I'm a bit of a foodie, and you're super well traveled between. I was reading about your growing up with in a military family and being born in Germany and traveling all over, and then obviously with DMB, you've gotten the opportunity to travel a ton. And as you're getting back out on the road, I was wondering if there's any sort of cuisines you're really looking forward to having again.
wow. It's funny. After being home for a year and a half and my wife cooking me some of the most amazing things because she knows how to cook really healthy stuff. And when I think of something that's not healthy that I like a fast food item, she can reverse engineer it and make a healthy version. Like the Taco Bell bean burritos. It's not really a burrito. It's not Mexican food, but it's its own thing. But it's the most sodium bomb thing you could eat. And I love the way those taste. It's just onions, cheese, and fried beans. But she
For sure.
made she learned how to make one really healthy. So I got used to eating really good things that were kind of my favorite. And I have to say, going back and tasting some of the things I thought were so great, I was kind of disappointed. Not in everything, but some things I thought, wow, that's so sweet. Or. But like I say, I love Mexican food in
Okay.
general, all of it,
Yeah.
all the forms. Like I like a Taco Bell bean burrito. And new Mexican food is a different category as well, because it has the green chili element. So there's many varieties of that. And then South American food, just I never thought about it till I started going down there. And all the countries have amazing rice and bean varieties. Like in Brazil, they have this thing called feijoada. I think that's what it's called. And it's just rice and beans, but it's made over a long period of time with a ham hock and spices that only are in Brazil that make it taste that way. It's like when you go to New Mexico and get a green chili chicken burrito, that green chili is going to taste really different than if you order the same chili online and get it sent to your house frozen. It's done. It's like if you get fresh fish the day you caught it and cook it, it tastes different than it does the next day, even if it's fresh, because certain things are just so good in their pristine state. So fresh fish, I will go for that if it's in a town by the ocean.
Yeah.
And Mexican food, but I really like all kind of foods. I really love German food, although I don't like sauerkraut. But that doesn't matter because German food, sans sauerkraut, they do make a certain kind of sauerkraut that isn't, to me, awful, but I still don't want to eat it.
Okay.
They make one that's pink, not as sour, not as whatever you call it. I don't like horseradish, that kind of stuff. I like radishes anyway. But I love a lot of kind of food. It's hard.
Yeah.
Road, it's hard with DMB because you have great meals available all day, except for breakfast, because we usually get up and I work out and go to Starbucks or something very simple. But then by at noon or 1 or 2, you have the most amazing elaborate lunch layout. And then starting at 4 or 5, you have the most amazing dinner layout. And then after every gig, they ask you, would you like an after show, either catering or we can order you something. So in a way, it's you really have to discipline yourself to not overeat. At home, it's easy because you get into a structured thing, which was really great about COVID. You kind of learned how to eat properly and consistent every day. On the road, it's different. You have the best food available, but you can also just eat too much and eat too often and have a cookie every time you go to catering, and then instead of just having one, so that's a challenge. It's not a bad challenge. It's just, you notice pants getting tighter on the road. It should be the other way around. You should be getting skinny on the road. It's supposed to be hard.
Good problems to have.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, well, since this is kind of the twist of that question, I guess, and you already maybe answered it, is when you get back from a leg of tour, what's the thing that you look forward to the most?
Usually, because I'm brain dead, what I look forward to most, even though it usually doesn't happen, is doing nothing. Although, to me, doing nothing is getting up and doing yoga and some working out, maybe taking an hour walk, and then relaxing, by the pool that's kind of doing nothing. That's kind of my stability zone routine during COVID. Uh, and then, but yeah, I mean, and then I just usually want to listen to music. That's kind of the next thing. That's the food for the soul. I do that on the road too. And in a way, everything is an interruption to listening to music. You just want to hear music all the time, and everything else is like, I got to do that. But that's not, that's just an exaggeration to be funny. But I
Okay.
just really, food is food, but music is almost a more important food. Although you will die if you don't eat. But if I didn't listen, I'd probably die too, of a different reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing you. I have the tab pulled up for either November 12th or 13th at Madison Square Garden. And I just want to thank you and say that I appreciate you using your music as a vehicle to make positive impacts on this world and your community. And thank you again, for taking the time to hang out with me. And, I'm really happy to meet you for the first time, and I hope I get to meet you again sometime soon.
Right, man.
Uh,
Okay, you too, man.
yeah, yeah. All right, Tim. It's been fun.
All right, take care, man.